Hello, welcome and good evening to the second part of the MUS 1099 GameBlaster clone assembly. And finally the additional parts arrived, which are mainly these two things here. It's a little variable resistor or potentiometer, which is actually too small for this footprint, but we can bend the legs here a little bit and make it fit. It can be secured to the bracket, which also arrived, and I had to use a stationary drill to drill those two holes with a nice sink head. And I think it turned out pretty well. Already fitted it, so it should work fine. You always have to make sure to take your measurements correctly, best by mounting the bracket and then using a permanent or non-permanent marker to mark the center of the hole. Best to also measure the height of these things. Yeah, you have to be a bit careful, because otherwise you have got a wasted bracket, and they're actually not that cheap. I think they're €1 or €2 each. And this is also the main problem for those reproduction or new rebuild cards, to get fitting brackets for those. But if there's only like circular holes, these are still pretty easy to make, because these keystone brackets are still readily available in quantities of thousands at Mauser and other vendors. Alright, the other thing that I didn't mention last time was that there's a little tantalum capacitor here, and they have polarity. You can probably see the plus sign on the right leg here, but it's not noted on the PCB which way to mount. But taking a look at the other side shows you that the left leg here is on this ground plane here, so this definitely is the negative lead. This here should be the positive lead. So once we plug that in, we will see if I was right. Otherwise this thing will probably go boom, but let's hope not, or else, yeah, it would be pretty sad. Also added the jumper in the 220 position here, and other than that I think we are ready to go. So basically I want to solder in these things here. This is the more easy one. It already stays in place, iron seated up. So let's just start with this, because it's so easy to put in and solder. And the other one I will solder from the top and also a bit from the bottom to fill the holes with solder, and hope that it will make good contact on the other side as well. Yeah, that should hold it in place. Plus I have nuts and washers to make this hold in place on the bracket, which will give a lot of strain relief. Otherwise this thing probably will break off. Alright, let's go. Okay, very quick interlude. This is how I bent the pins. You have to be careful not to break them off, but basically these back ones go horizontally, almost horizontally out, and these are a bit angled, like 45 degrees, and the others just a bit bent outward, and this way we can actually make contact on all pads. And now some nice blobs of solder should help with that. I will start by soldering the middle ones, because they will give some structural support, and then do the other four pads. Okay, here we are, and if we take a look, the solder joints look okay-ish. From the bottom it looks like this. Hasn't been cleaned yet, you see a lot of flux residue here. We'll go over this with isopropyl and a soft toothbrush. in a minute or so. Yeah, but other than that, seems to be fine. I will test this with the multimeter to see if it's has good contact. By probing here the bottom pads. If they are good, I think the contact should be fine. Or we can also measure here and between those pads here, and should go from roughly 0 to 10K, whatever the minimum, the maximum is of this. Yeah. So let's check that. Okay, now this is set onto maximum. So I check this pad here. Come on. And the center pin here, which should give us 10K. Yeah, that's the max. Then let's check these two pads. And again we get 10K. Perfect. Now let's move it to the halfway position, roughly. This will give us... Oh, come on. Oh, that's wrong. Was this shorted? 5.2K? Yeah, that's roughly halfway. And then the second channel is 5.3K. That's absolutely fine. And I think this way should be maximum volume. And it's... Oh, come on. Slipping off. It's a few ohm. That's fine. And again, the second channel. Come on. 2, 3, 4 ohm. Yeah. So all checks out fine. Last thing to do is to mount the bracket and double check all the components, and then we'll put it into the machine and see if it will explode or if it will work. Let's hope it works. Yeah, so let's mount the bracket and test this thing. Alright, it's finished, and I must say I think this looks absolutely beautiful. You could mount a plastic cap on here, like 3D print one or something, but I think this is perfectly usable and you probably won't be adjusting it much. So what have we got here? Here are the two Philips synth chips. They are mounted correctly, I would say, because you always have to check that the notches align with the sockets. That's the case here, and of course before that the silk screen notch is also on the same position as the socket. You can solder this of course without any socket, which is for better contact, but I do this, as I said, because these are old chips and they might fail or be already defective, and I can easily swap them out. And since those sockets don't cost much, I also use it for the standard 74 series chips, because actually the chips are more expensive than the sockets, so I can salvage that if this were to break. The other thing to note is this little resistor package. There's a pin 1 marked here, and there's a little dot right there. So pin 1 and dot have to align, because that's basically the ground, and all the other resistors will go there. And this is probably a comparator or something, and it codes some address, or I don't know. Usually that's what they're for. And these are all the little buffer capacitors for the ICs, that they don't glitch in any way. The other thing that you have to check is the polarity on the electrolytics and the tantalum. That one I already explained. But this also looks good. The pluses are all on the right side, I think. The electrolytics always have a stripe with a minus sign on them, and the plus side is usually marked on the PCB. This looks all well. And if once in a while it's not marked on the PCB, you have to trace the ground, as I said, which will be the negative side. Yeah, so I would say this is an absolutely beautiful card. I will clean it later after I check that it really works. This should not do any harm in the short term, but it's nicer to have the flux removed. Yeah. Other than that, lovely card. So let's put it in the machine. Okay, let's have a look at Dr. Hardware, if we can actually identify the GameBlaster card. It's checking, taking a while. And afterwards we will check out a few games. I will also upload more games on my second channel, link in the description. So let's see here, sound card is a dash, and in the menu, also in the other menus, I don't see anything. Yeah, sound card is disabled, so it could not detect the card, which is not a problem. Probably doesn't support that card anyway. So let's try out Space Quest 4. I know that it supports the GameBlaster. I run the install tool, takes a few seconds, and here we have it. Yeah, we can choose that. And many of the Sierra games actually support the GameBlaster, and quite a few of the Lucasfilm games as well, and a bunch of other games from the late 80s and early 90s. And yeah, let's see if this works. And I'm already thanking you for watching. Have a great evening. Share, like and subscribe. And please check also out the other game videos I upload on the Route 42 Plus channel. And will it work? Let's see. Loading times are slow. But yeah, this sounds great. Seems to work fine. So please enjoy Space Quest 4, Indiana Jones 3 and Monkey Island.